what is fair about this? Rutland is in the bottom 10 unitary authorities for funding per dwelling before council tax. A Band D council taxpayer in Rutland next year will pay around £370 more than the average in England. How is this fair? Is our MP, Alicia Kearns, doing anything to improve our lack of funding in Rutland? Doing anything to help the hard-pressed council taxpayers of Rutland? Is she championing us by raising the fact that rural authorities like Rutland are penalised when it comes to funding? The latest funding statement on the 24th of January, which did provide some welcome extra funding for rural counties, was partly the result of a letter sent by the county all-party parliamentary group to Rishi Sunak and Michael Gove on the 12th of January this year. It was signed by a total of 46 MPs representing rural authorities from all parties. But was it signed by Alicia Kearns? I have it here. No, it wasn't. Why didn't she sign it? I'll leave it to members in the electorate to decide whether she really cares about council taxpayers in Rutland. If you think you pay too much council tax, don't write to us, write to Alicia Kearns. It's her government that is to blame. And why isn't she prepared to do anything about it? We've been dealt a doubly bad hand in Rutland this year, a bad hand from the central Conservative government and a bad hand from the previous administration of Rutland County Council that we inherited when the electorate of Rutland voted for us last May. The previous administration was timid and indecisive. What decisions did they make to improve the life of the people of Rutland? What decisions did they make to transform services and reduce the costs to run Rutland County Council? They were timid. They did not properly engage with the fact that Rutland County Council was living beyond its means, was spending more cash than central government was providing to us. Instead, they vacillated and left us with a retention and recruitment crisis where our employees were leaving in droves with no recovery plan. They left us with an aging waste collection fleet that they had kept for so long, it breaks down all the time. They even made the council unapproachable to many residents by closing down reception. Their indecision and inability to grasp the difficult decisions has left us needing to make them. We have grasped the situation and are fully engaged with the need to commit to a sustainable financial budget. We have had to cope with the insidious effects of inflation. Even so, we have started to cope. We have started the process of transformation earlier than planned, so that we get a head start on next year. We have embraced the need to transform the services provided by Rutland County Council so that services are improved whilst costs are reduced. Our task as councillors this evening is simple. We are assembled to set a sustainable budget for the financial year 2024-25. We have a duty to set a sustainable budget which reflects the ambitions of the council, taking the known risks into account within the envelope of the current level of funding available. This debate is about whether the proposed budget represents an acceptable compromise within the funding envelope, all things considered. It seems to be every few weeks we hear of the latest local authority hitting the financial buffers with either the threat of or actual issuance of a Section 114 notice. We are being told that the majority of these are down to poor decision-making or financial mismanagement, although the most recent one at Nottingham City Council appears to be the result of the cumulative impact of rising demand and increased costs. There is no doubt that most authorities are living closer to the edge than ever before, and that will continue to be the case. Never before has planning for financial sustainability been more important. The budget before you, together with the medium-term financial strategy, will ensure that Rutland achieves what we set out to do and avoids us being in danger of hitting the headlines in the same way that Northamptonshire, Thurrock, Croydon, Birmingham City, Nottingham City, and others have done in the past few years. There is a groundswell of opinion, both within and without local government, that without significant and recurring central government support, dozens of councils will no longer be able to live within their means. There is a widespread assumption that there will be a bailout of some kind within the period of our medium-term financial strategy. This, to me, is a very high-risk strategy and not one on which we should be basing our plans. It is much better that we control our own destiny and map out our own pathway to financial sustainability on the basis of the current funding environment. I believe that we will achieve the objective of sustainability if this council supports this budget. Let me explain why. Firstly, our budget is simply the financial result of a series of choices which flow from strategies to priorities to actions. This flow is demonstrated very transparently in the 200 pages or so of the budget and its appendices. This flow starts with delivering on our 4 priorities as set out in the corporate strategy that we have just heard about. Flowing from this are a series of service ambitions by each directorate, which are all set out in detail in Appendix C. As long ago as June last year, initial indicative cash limits were set out for each directorate so that their ambitions could be shaped into an affordable offer. Strategic directors were then tasked with allocating these cash limits across their component services. So in determining the overall level of spend for each area of our business, budget managers have mapped out the detail of how they will manage rising demand, cope with the associated costs, and importantly, how they will deliver savings from improved efficiency and more focused targeting of spending. The detailed figures are set out in the tables in Appendix B. Overall, we are investing 5.2 million, some 10% of our revenue, in improving and maintaining our service offering, including looking after an ever-increasing number of our residents who need support with day-to-day living. We are also investing over £40 million of capital monies in our infrastructure over the period of this MTFS. It is incumbent on all of us, members and officers, to ensure that we deliver excellent value for money across the whole spectrum of services that we supply. It will be wrong for us to consider closing down some frontline services until we are sure that we are operating as efficiently as possible. With this in mind, we have set an ambitious and challenging transformation programme that will leave no stone unturned in finding savings that have minimal impact on our residents, service users, partners and staff. The savings from this programme of 4.6 million over the MTFS, which are set out in Appendix B, will result in the council looking and operating differently to how we currently deliver services, as we simply cannot afford to remain the same as we are now. For example, with our innovative community hub plan, we will provide a one-stop shop approach by providing universal and preventative services for all age groups. A fundamental pillar of any sustainability plan is to ensure we can ride out the storms that inevitably come over the 4 years of a medium-term plan. We also need to be able to invest in transformation programs and to move quickly to maximise opportunities that can suddenly present themselves. None of this would be possible if we didn't have a satisfactory level of reserves across the life of this MTFS. This will not happen by chance and therefore requires a strategic approach to managing our level of reserves. Our reserves strategy is set out in Appendix I. Our risk reserve is our main buffer against unexpected and unbudgeted events, while the earmarked reserves will fund innovative projects that will deliver future benefits. I'm sure that none of us in this room would increase council tax unless we absolutely have to. Unfortunately, we do absolutely have to. We are now heavily reliant on council tax for our funding. As I said earlier, council tax now represents some 77% of our funding. And in the latest settlement, there is an assumption that we raise the additional amount, some 76%, from council tax. The alternative to increasing council tax would simply be to provide less services, given that we already have focus on our spending on the most vulnerable and highest priority areas. I believe asking a Band D council taxpayer for an extra £1.93 a week, as unpleasant as the increase is the right thing to do if we want to continue to be a caring community. In closing, what we are asking councillors to approve is a budget based on our corporate priorities that protects frontline services wherever possible, that carries an acceptable level of risk, that is backed by an appropriate level of reserves. It is with reluctance that we are proposing the maximum council tax increase that we allowed to without a referendum. But financial sustainability will simply not be possible without increasing our annual income to meet rising costs and rising demand. It is important that as many people as possible in our county can understand our budget, how it changes year on year. And I believe the papers that are in front of you enable the reader to see where we are spending our limited resources in a very transparent way. Finally, I would just like to thank all those involved in the preparation of this budget: the finance team, the chief executive, the directors and all their staff, the cabinet, and particularly those 258 members of the public who took the time to respond to the consultation on the budget. Thank you all very much. I commend this budget to the council and move that the recommendations listed at section 1.2 of report number 04/2024 be approved with the replacement of Appendix Q with the copy circulated in the agenda supplement.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson. Do you have a seconder? Councillor Waller. Councillor Stevenson, do you have a point of information?
I was just seeking clarity whether we were debating the budget or debating government.
Right. Okay, so we've got a proposer and a seconder. So I will now open the debate and remind members that in order to participate in the vote, each member must remain in the chamber for the duration of the debate, and the council may adjourn for a comfort break if required. So members. Oh, Councillor Ross.
Thank you, Chair. This council have previously noted that central government decided in September 2023 not to provide the fair funding that it identified as being required to support the delivery of our services, an amount amounting to some 1.25 million. Notwithstanding this shortfall, we are being asked to support a budget for 2024-25 that requires the council to draw upon its reserves, and we are in the very fortunate position that through the good work of our officers, this is possible, at least for 24-25. It does mean, however, that Rutland will still continue to have amongst the highest levels of council tax in England, whilst at the same time having the lowest wages in employment in the East Midlands, a rather unwelcome dichotomy. There are positives in the budget. We welcome the additional 46k provided of the lead local flood authority and the 200k provided in respect of the comprehensive section 19 review, and consider these to be necessary investments. We also welcome that the cabinet will explore alternative schemes in 2024-25 in respect of council tax discretionary relief funds, which have historically had a low level of take-up by residents. This brings me to my question to Councillor Johnson in respect of section 5.4, grants and the local government provisional settlement of 5th February, where it is noted that the settlement received by RCC is less than the price inflation being experienced within the child and adult social care sectors. Can members therefore conclude that the funding received from government will not meet the cost of increase in the national living wage, and consequently this council is required to draw upon its reserves to meet government policy commitments that have specific applicability to our social care budget and service provision? Thank you.
Councillor Ross. Councillor Johnson, would you like to address that?
I can address that one, Chair, yes. I think Councillor Ross makes a fair point, and it's one of interpretation. The national living wage has been given an increase which takes it to £11.44 an hour, which is a 10% increase from April. And this is way above any increase in funding from government. As I said earlier, the increase in funding that Rutland has is 2.7% outside any council tax increase, which I think frames an answer to the question that Councillor Ross is trying to ask. Obviously, as you tumble the numbers through a large budget like we have here, it's quite difficult to attribute exact inputs to exact outputs. But there's certainly a case that national constraints are running ahead of the constraints that this council is allowed to deal with, other than raising council tax.
Councillor Johnson, members. Councillor Karen Payne.
Thank you, Chair. I'm pleased the council continues to support the financial sustainability strategy agreed by council in November 22 under the previous coalition executive. I am similarly pleased the transformation programme instigated as an integral part of this strategy by the coalition executive continues to be implemented. The Section 151 officer and her team are delivering on promises made when we interviewed her. Thank you, Ms. Norton and team, for fulfilling those promises. The anticipated amount of reserves needed to be drawn down to balance the budget in 24-25 has been reduced from £1.65 million in the sustainability strategy to £0.9 million. This is due to extra investment income received, which is positive and great news. I also note that we still hold in reserves the amount of money to fund a balanced budget over the term of the sustainability strategy, as agreed by council, as some risk mitigation. However, from 25-26 onwards, the MTFS strategy in this budget shows there is no contribution required from reserves to produce a balanced budget. A backdrop of political uncertainty exists due to a general election this year and the impacts it could have on funding settlement income, the economic environment, interest rates and inflation, etc. Consultants think the funding settlement could stay flat at best. But against this uncertain backdrop, the MTFS assumes a significant increase in income generated from the collection of council tax from an additional 140 properties being built and occupied per annum, with a rate of a 5% council tax being applied. This assumes an anticipated increase in income of £2 million year on year from these properties. The uncertain backdrop and the noted increases in inflation and demand may also undermine anticipated savings made through the transformation programme. As existing contracts are let or new ones are made, new contracts increasing rather than decreasing in value. I note that 4 of the initiatives are showing amber and 1 is red at present. I am concerned there are some very high risk assumptions underpinning the MTFS as published in the budget document that brings us back to a balanced budget without the use of reserves in 25 and 26. This will be very challenging to deliver. I do sincerely hope all involved are capable and ready for this challenge. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Payne. Councillor Johnson. Oh, is that not? Oh, apparently that wasn't a question. Yeah. Okay. Other members. Councillor Powell.
Thank you, Chair. A couple of points. One a bit of clarification, if I may. One of the approval sentences 1.2.9 is approving the vehemence. I have asked a couple of questions on this already, but I'd just be grateful if it could be clarified from that whether we, in doing this, we are approving the FPR and the remit of that, or whether actually we're confirming what the rules already are. And there will be a review of the financial procedural rules in the future that will come to the Constitution Commission. Just following on from that, which is not a detailed question, I'd just like to remind Councillor Johnson that a significant number of councillors on this council are actually independent councillors. When you're referring to an opposition and a party, that is not, we individually have our views on party politics, so please don't group us all together. We make a significant contribution. We were part of that for a year. We were part of that coalition cabinet last year to put in a lot of foundation work on the budget, and it appalls me that we're actually lancing into political comments about blaming government, blaming previous administration, when really what we need to do is to get on with what we can do for the best within this council chamber for our residents. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Powell. Other members? Councillor Stevenson.
Thank you, Chair, and I absolutely support what Councillor Powell has just said. I don't think I've ever known such a political introduction, but perhaps no surprise in a general election year. However, in terms of the budget, I'm going to support this budget. It would be crazy not to. We need to have a budget that the Section 151 officer supports as being sound by the 31st of March. If we were to turn this budget down, we would place Rutland in terrible danger and terrible risk. So therefore it has my support. Where all members will need to think very carefully as we move forward, and I echo Councillor Johnson's gratitude to the 258 residents who responded to the consultation. It's great that their comments have been reported verbatim. It's a shame that there's been no analysis offered in terms of the comments that were made and whether or not those have actually been addressed this evening. There are a couple of things we will need to think about very, very carefully, members, moving forwards. Local government is in a really difficult position. Culpability lies actually with central government over the last 100 years. There are some very good reports looking at how local government has evolved. And I think all of us, and certainly I'm looking at the leader, absolutely knows that. We also have another slight quandary. Within the consultation, question 1, what came out as the highest or the biggest response? 53% absolutely agreed that we should have good public services. In our medium-term financial plan, and I know that there are really good reasons for this, so this is not a political point, 7% of that medium-term financial plan is put into delivering those good services. The others are statutory, and I understand that. So in terms of a budget where we can debate, where we actually have power over choosing where we spend our money, is very, very limited. Reading the comments from the residents, and there were a couple of very political ones in there, the majority didn't mention politics at all. They mentioned things that were very, very important to them. Leisure centres, special educational needs schools, potholes, drains being cleared so that they didn't have their properties flooded or their day-to-day lives disrupted because they can't make those journeys. We members, absolutely every single one of us, have a duty over this next year, looking at our performance management reports, looking at those plans that deliver our corporate strategy. We have a responsibility to see how we square that very difficult round hole. We are not pleasing residents at the moment, so I didn't take it personally when they were referring to the fact there should be no councillors and the horrid people at RCC. But that's how our residents are feeling. I don't think they want to hear petty politics. They want to be reassured that 76% of their budget, which they have coughed up for, is being spent wisely and being spent properly. So yes, I will be supporting this budget, but I do hope that for next year, we can leave the politics behind. We can use scrutiny to really drill into these things. And when we ask our members of the public to take time to consult, their responses aren't merely printed out in papers for us to read, but they are analysed, patterns are spotted, themes are identified. And that is what I would ask from the current executive. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stevenson. I think you mentioned, Councillor Stevenson, a date by which the budget must be set. For the record,
Have I got that wrong?
I'm afraid you have. It's the 11th of March.
Oh, gosh. Oh, my point is even more pertinent, Chair.
Councillor Waller.
Thank you. It's I can't think of the terminology.
Point of order or point of information?
A point of information. Thank you very much, Chairman. I appreciate that. Councillor Stevenson, I take on board what you were saying, and you will see when you read my next column in the Mercury but I have in fact reflected on a number of those comments.
I look forward to it, councillor Waller. Thank you.
Other members? Councillor Clifton.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. In standing to address you on the issue of the proposed council tax and the budget this evening, I am conscious that clearly many members have had rather much greater experience of council budgets and local government affairs, as well as in all probability, they have a much more budget orientated mindset, if I can put it like that. However, having had what I may be allowed to call both the leadership and the front bench views from the experts amongst us, I feel that I should say a few words on behalf of the residents of my ward of Braunston and Martinsthorpe. We've had a very eloquent exposition from the front bench of the Liberal Democrats. So this is perhaps what you might call the views of an ordinary or backbench view. So if I may, firstly, I would like to sincerely thank the council, taxpayers and businesses of Rutland for what they do. Without them, we would not be in business at all. I think that the public sector can, if I may say, sometimes convey the impression that it takes for granted the monies it receives and has a tendency to regard it as its own money. But we must be clear about this. This is the public's money, the money which ordinary hardworking Rutlanders create by their own effort and enterprise and can-do attitude. And we should bear this in mind. Secondly, if I may, Mr. Chairman, I would like to offer my sincere thanks to all the officers and all the employees of Rutland County Council who provide an array of services day in and day out, 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. As we all know from our own experiences, this is not always appreciated, known or acknowledged by our residents, but it needs to be stated, and I for one am grateful. All this does not just happen. It takes effort, organization and hard work. I would like to place on record my thanks for those who go the extra mile and without reward, acknowledgement or fanfare deliver for Rutland. I would also, in fact, like to thank the portfolio holders opposite for the work they do, especially in those areas I have personally had the most involved in, highways and planning. Let us be upfront and honest. Neither of these are easy or a quick route to popularity, so thank you for the effort that I know you put in. Echoing the words of my own dear leader, Councillor Stevenson, I do not view the budget proposals before us tonight as especially contentious. To my mind, raising the council tax by 2.99% and the adult social care precept by 2% for a total increase of 4.99% is largely what one would expect. I note that the total budget for the financial year 24-25 is expected to be £81 million, although we are tonight dealing with the net budget. We are all aware that the combined impacts of the coronavirus pandemic and the war of Russian aggression in Ukraine have combined to produce much higher levels of inflation than we have been used to in recent years. And I would say that on that issue, it is nice that we are all actually united and not, as might be the occasion, occasionally divided. And I also see that the council tax would go up for a bandy property in Rutland by £7.72 a month. To me, that seems a reasonable request to make. And furthermore, I note that Councillor Stevenson has accurately noted that we are required by law to set a balanced budget and to do so by the 11th of March. And I feel that to otherwise argue would be disingenuous. I am personally a little uneasy at the proposal to use the reserves to fund part of the budget. I appreciate that this might occasionally happen, but in an ideal world, I would prefer to see a slight reduction in spending. Also, I would like to say that on a personal level, I would like to see this council consider the idea formulated in South Kesteven to provide a small discount to armed forces veterans in Band A housing between 5 and 10%. I hope that we might be able to look at this in the future. I also note, and we are very clear on this, that we are receiving only 77% of core funding in Rutland is from the council tax, whereas we know that nationally it's for 56%, which I presume is for unitary authorities. There is no doubt that the current funding formulas as they exist disadvantage rural, sparsely populated areas, such as our beloved county of Rutland. Whilst this is, in my view, one of the factors that helps to make Rutland such a desirable an attractive place to live, it is no doubt helping to drive the funding inequality, which we are all aware. It has not escaped my notice, Mr. Chairman, that this has been an area on which much work has been done. It is not as though the previous councillors and leaders of this council have not been assiduous in chasing it up. I will continue to give it to my support, although I do not think there'll be a dramatic change in circumstances, because that is not the nature of His Majesty's Treasury. Finally, I have to say, somewhat disappointed by the partisan tone adopted by the statement of the Deputy of the Council in his introductory remarks. I don't really think they're entirely fair. I note that from 1997 to 2015, we had 13 years of majority Labour government with stonking majorities. We had 5 years of a Conservative Liberal Democrat government. Since 2015, we have had either a minority Conservative government or a majority Conservative government dealing with successively the unprecedented issues of fulfilling the electorate's wish to leave the European Union, the coronavirus pandemic, and the war.
Councillor Clifton, if you can
And I will
sum up,
support this
please.
budget, Mr. Chairman, but I do feel that in future, we should not present facts one-sidedly, and we should do it the right way for Rutland. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Clifton. And you rightly mentioned that our staff and officers are working 365 days a year. Of course, this year it's 366. So, other members? Councillor Hemsley.
Thank you very much, Chairman. As others have already said, I am intrigued by the political posturing in this presentation. And whilst I support the budget in principle, it is clear that national government has no idea what we as local government achieve with the annually reducing funding. Now, I just would like to point out in 3.2, refresh corporate strategy, we know that we have a climate emergency, but I would also urge caution that we give to the remit we give to the climate change officer that has been previously mentioned in the chamber. As is clear from recent information on plastics recycling, that less than 7% is actually recycled. The plans to plant trees, whilst again could be beneficial, it will add to the carbon footprint, as an additional 110% of the world's emissions come from rotting vegetation. We're soon going to have to consider food waste collection. It is clear that we should not blindly go where we are told without having a clear understanding of the long-term impacts and the real benefits. There are several contracts being awarded currently or in the very near future, and if we are to ensure that we live within our means, it is imperative that the current cabinet fully understand their roles and seek for best value, not just in monetary terms, but in the county's future incumbents, and we need to look long-term at the decisions we make. My question is, will the leader continue to keep the Rutland issue regarding the funding at the forefront of the Treasury's mind and work with our MP to protect what we have in this county? And furthermore, seek to work with our Rutland businesses wherever possible to seek cost-effective and locally beneficial solutions to some of the issues we currently face. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Hemsley. I think it was Councillor Wallet, if you'd like to
Thank you.
respond.
We are working with the for the benefit of non-councillors who are listening, on an organisation called the Rural Services Network, which is an organisation of rural authorities and indeed some organisations that aren't local authorities in rural areas. And it exists to lobby government on the needs of rural councils. We are not simply working with them. I'm actually on their executive now, so I am making sure that the needs of councils such as Rutland are at the foremost of their thinking. So yes, we are continuing to do that. I have today, for the first time, despite regular requests of our MP, received a schedule of meetings from her office that's now in my diary. I very much welcome that because it's important that not only that she understands the issues that face us, but that we understand from her perspective on these issues so that we can shape our arguments accordingly. So I do welcome that development. And as far as business is concerned, you will appreciate that our economic development officer moved to pastures new. At the time, we were consulting on the local plan, and the director for both economic development and planning is one and the same person. And so priorities from an officer perspective shifted very slightly. However, I reviewed what Cabinet were doing, and as a consequence, Councillor Brown has taken over the portfolio for economic development and is very conscious of the need to excuse me, to engage business in discussions. He and I have had conversations about it. Our new officers are starting within the next month, 6 weeks maybe. Sorry, I've lost track of time a little. Certainly before the end of the financial year. And we will be looking to expand our engagement with business locally as a result of that. I regret that we are in this position, to be perfectly honest. I would like to have moved on this sooner, but circumstances were such that we had to focus our energies on the local plan because for reasons that we all know. Thank you.
Councillor Waller, other members. Okay, Councillor Farina.
Thank you, Chair. I'm happy to support tonight's budget. Having been elected member of the council for nearly a year now, I do understand that it's been difficult for all councils up and down the country making these decisions. We, of course, bear in mind that this budget has been produced from residents' money, and I trust that this has been put together considerately, but also considering the tough and challenging times that lay ahead for our county, communities and economy. I will be supporting this tonight.
Councillor Farina, any other members? In that case, Councillor Johnson, would you like to sum up?
Yes, Chair, thank you very much. I'm just going to say that I'd like to commend the budget to council. I take note of the comments that have been made. I trust that we can work mutually to avoid any confrontation in future. So what I would like to do is repeat my commendation of the budget to council and move that we take the motion, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Johnson. And the motion is that council approves the recommendations which are found on pages 39 and 40 of the agenda. I do not intend to read that out. And with this being the approval of the updated Appendix Q. So in accordance with procedural rules, this vote will be recorded. Members will be asked to raise their hands as normal, but must keep them raised whilst Mr. Delaney marks every individual member's vote on a prepared sheet. Mr. Delaney will then read the result and individual members' votes for the benefit of the webcast. So it's therefore vital for members to keep their arms fully raised for the duration of the voting so that their vote is not inaccurately recorded. So all those in favour, please raise your hands.
Thank you, Chair. I believe every member has voted in favour, therefore, for the benefit of the record, all 26 members in attendance have voted in favour.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Delaney. In that case, the motion is carried. Item 11 is reports from committees of the council, and there are no reports from committees this evening. Item 12 is reports from scrutiny, so there's no reports from scrutiny this evening either. Item 13 is joint arrangements and external organisations. So members will have seen the circulated reports via the agenda and the agenda supplement. So I'll give members a chance to speak to their report and take each report as received and noted unless other members have any questions. Councillor Ross, would you like to speak to your report on the Leicestershire and Rutland Joint Health Scrutiny Committee?
I apologise. Thank you, Chairman. Could I just provide an update to members based upon the agenda setting meeting of Tuesday of last week. Item 2 in your paper highlights the NHS dentistry provision. The report has been delayed until August and therefore September LLR scrutiny, and only an update will be provided at the March meeting. No explanation was given for that delay. Item 4, ambulance response times and related. Members will have noted that the critical incident notification from UHL on the 23rd of January and its removal on the 25th of January, which were related to LRI A and E and Glenfield Clinical Decisions Unit, the knock-on impact on ambulance response times. In relation to A&E, this has meant the trust has gone in a short period of time from being the most improved in the previous 12 months to now 172nd out of 188 trusts in December. The issue of capacity planning and facility utilisation, for example, the Maryland Vase unit, will be discussed at the March scrutiny meeting and a report given to this council in April. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ross. Are there any questions, Councillor Ross? Okay, thank you. Councillor Payne.
Thank you, Chair. I did submit a report from the Heidelberg Cement Liaison meeting of the 6th of December, and it's within the pack. I'm happy to answer any questions any councillors may have, but otherwise, I don't intend to read the whole report out. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Payne. Any questions for Councillor Payne? Nope. Okay. Item 14, notices of motion. We have no notices of motion this evening. Item 15 is any urgent business, and I've not been made aware of any urgent business for consideration at the next council meeting, which is on the 25th of March. That concludes the business for this meeting. Therefore, thank you, members. Thank you, members of the public and those listening in. And this meeting is declared closed at 8:10.